Yeah.
I'm absolutely thrilled, I must say, to be able to welcome Gert Loving to the Master Institute, to Karat, and to this edition of the Performative Defiance lecture series. Gert is not just a good friend, but we have some history together. Gert actually was one of the very few people in the Netherlands that welcomed me with open arms when I came here from London like some 20 years ago, 15, 20 years ago. The other one, who was actually a little bit like you, was Rosi Braidotti, who is going to give the next lecture in our series in April, on April 15th. Gert is, of course, a world-famous theorist and commenter on the internet. He is based in Amsterdam, where he is also a professor and the director of the Institute of Network Cultures at the University of Applied Science of Amsterdam. And I think they got like three main pillars, of work at the, if I'm correct, Gert employed me for a while, and we organized a conference together, which was the second of a series. Maybe we should do a third one it was called Creative Industries Sweatshop. And that's one of the things that they do. They organize conferences. There's loads of book publications that they produce. You can see some of them there. And there's also a sort of research network that I think follows the lead of Mark Granovetter, right? The strength of weak ties, having to do with NetTime, the listserv, and so on and so on. And other kind of loose networks that reach really around the globe. Gert is also a very prolific writer. He has written loads of books with titles such as Uncanny Networks, Dark Fiber, My First Recession, Zero Comments, Networks Without a Cause, Social Media Abyss, and with Ned Rossiter, Organizations After Social Media, and his newest book is called Sad by Design, and if I'm correct, then it came out in 6 languages, is that right? 5 languages. Yes. So that is the kind of guy that we have here. Gert has always been a very sort of innovative and sort of forward-thinking, yet very critical thinker on the internet, on the sort of cultural impact that kind of new technology has on our cultures and societies. And I think that is enough by way of introduction. His talk is entitled Sad by Design, Notes on the Network Psyche, and we are again thrilled to have you. Thanks for coming, and I'm looking forward to a great talk and an exciting discussion afterwards. Thank you.
Thank you. Thanks a lot. It's my first time here in this school, so it's very exciting for me to be here and to share my thoughts and to discuss the concepts with you. Indeed, as Sebastian emphasized, we have a number of networks for artists, activists, researchers, critics, journalists, researchers, whoever wants to join. So if you look at stuff here, there's always an invitation, a very explicit one, for you to join. But you can also, of course, when you're in Amsterdam, you can also just drop in and say hello, come and look at what we're doing, talk about what you are, what your interest is. We have a lot of places where you can work and have an internship, or we can discuss things, okay? So this is an open invitation to you all to come and work with us. Maybe you understand a little later that you know, this is also an invitation to you to publish work with us. And I will discuss a little later the different formats. So this is the website, the current website, networkcultures.org. We started the lectorate, which it is, in the Applied Science School, the Hogeschool van Amsterdam. In fact, the biggest one in the country, with 50,000 students. We are part of a research network inside the school. So the faculty, you know, they're all, for me, a little bit surreal numbers, right? The faculty has 8,000 students, and then, so that is both computer science, media and communication, communication and media design, but also the fashion school, Amphi, maybe you've heard about that. Okay, so that's our faculty, and since 2004, when I came back from Australia to start this job, we opened this website. So for more than 15 years, we've been contributing to this. So it's quite a big resource. This is perhaps the oldest and still running network. It consists of about 500 artists and activists who are working on online video. So you could also call it YouTube studies, okay, but we're not really, it's not so academic. We're not an academic institution like here. We do a lot of stuff. So, recently we had the 12th, gathering, and they're video activists, and they're all discussing, what is online video today, and how can we distinguish that from, let's say, television on the one hand, and a cinema and its specific language on the other, right? And so this is as you may know, YouTube has been around since late 2005, early 2006. So YouTube is not quite 15 years old, about the same age as we are. And in fact, we have just published the history of videos before YouTube. It's a really nice study and explains the in-between period between 2004 and 6 or 7, when people had the possibility in terms of bandwidth, etc., to make videos, but they didn't quite have the big platforms yet, right? So this was the age of video blogging, or vlogging, as it is still called, by the way. I just saw a really nice presentation of the writer, Trine Berry, who presented this work at the Transmediale a couple of days ago in Berlin. So you can become part of the network or visit the centers exchange if you are interested in this topic. A more recent and maybe much more alive network is one called MoneyLab. We started it in 2013 in the aftermath of the global financial crisis and let's say the years of Occupy, etc. Right? So in 2013, Bitcoin and the cryptocurrencies had just established itself more or less, and there were still a lot of discussions, what happened in this financial meltdown. But at the same time, of course, over the last 10 years, we've seen an enormous proliferation of what we call the digitization of money, or financial apps and tools, and a wide variety of alternative practices and critical works. A lot of them done by artists, by the way. And there's a book recently published by Max Haven, who only describes all these art projects of the last 10 years done by artists in this field, because there's a lot at stake here. if you know a little bit about what's going on with let's say the future of money, the democratization also of these digital money tools, then you will understand that this is a field of contestation where a lot of the, let's say, collective imagination and critical involvement of artists, designers, researchers is highly needed, but there's also a lot of space for it, right? So this is kind of still an expanding, let's say, universe of speculative, but also of critical, let's say, forces. And here you can see a list of the topics that this network that we are building and that is very lively is dealing with. So it starts with the critique of the blockchain. It means the critique of the white male kind of geek who is a right-wing libertarian and who is dreaming of Bitcoin that will abolish, the nation state and the tax and all this, right? Maybe you know this kind of dreams of the young boys that are really, really dominant still in this environment, right? So, and this was the origin of blockchain and Bitcoin, and so now, maybe 5-10 years later, a lot of people are working on what's called crypto feminism and the critique of the blockchain, right? Another one is, of course, maybe you've heard about it last year, is of course the monetization of social media platforms. And you're the generation that deals with this, right? This is your issue, your topic, and also your future. Remember, when you made that first payment or you bought something on Instagram or something like that, right? That's what we're talking about here. And that space is really, really rapidly growing. And maybe you follow a little bit what's going on in China with WeChat, WePay, Alipay, etc. Yeah, this is very, very well advanced over there, and Europe, but also in particular the United States, is lagging behind. And it's for the first time, in fact, that we see in the internet this complete reversal, right? That China is taking the lead, and that China is the advanced nation, and that the other parts of the world are kind of looking at it like, we need to do something, we need to adopt this, we need to respond. And maybe you remember about half a year ago, Mark Zuckerberg launched this so-called Libra initiative. Now, it has quickly died because Facebook was way too big an economic and political force for the Western elites to allow them to allow Facebook to develop a parallel currency, right? Everybody got very, very scared, and he more or less tactically withdrew. This happened around November somewhere, so at Facebook they are now reassessing, how to proceed. But this is a very, very exciting thing, and it directly involves you and your future, because it is also about how you are going to be paid for your work in the future, right? In the future, there will be much more, let's say, peer-to-peer payments, that people look at something you made and buy it, purchase it, or have to pay for it through a subscription. They pay through it through crowdfunding in whatever way, right? It doesn't really matter. There's a whole range of payment systems, and that's what we are dealing with here. Okay, so that you can see that on the list. So we're also dealing with, of course, the more dark side, which is very, very strong, I have to say. So the criminal energy, you can really feel it when you go there. Like, I can make a quick buck here. I can become a millionaire really, really quickly. And maybe that's true, Maybe, and so this is kind of the the gold diggers mentality that we found on the internet in the mid and late 90s. This is still kind of more or less happening in this field. 1 or 2 years ago, it was all about tokens. Maybe you follow that, yeah? And so it shifted a bit from the currencies to the tokens, and so. But still, you know, there's a lot of money, quick and dirty money to be made there. Okay, so I mentioned the role of the artists. This is for us, in fact, you know, one of the main issues. Then, of course, also the more broader philosophical, but also political question, which we will deal with more and more. The more things will get digitized, and that is the question of who will define what money is, right? In the past, money was defined by the nation state. It was controlled by the national bank, right? Now look at the euro. This is already no longer the case because you know, there is the ECB in Frankfurt, and we see that the national sovereignty, who defines money, is being eroded as you know, as we speak, right? Then another aspect, and a lot of artists are dealing with that, is finance, automation, and surveillance. So especially the surveillance of the payment systems. Every time you buy something with your card and you kind of click on it. Here in the Netherlands, we're kind of used to it, to do that. When you go to Germany, very nearby, people are very suspicious of that for the right reasons or not. We can discuss that, but yeah, so the whole question of what is called, you know, cashless society is a huge topic, right? What does it mean that every payment, every single payment is registered somewhere, right? And we can create a complete profile of who you are, where you are, what kind of things you buy, and so on and so on. Okay. And then, of course, the last but not least, blockchain beyond the hype, is the question, you know, what is the blockchain after all? And is it really something that, you know, should spark our imagination, the idea that you have a kind of a decentralized system, and which appeals to a lot of us? Yeah, should we continue to put a lot of money, but also our, let's say, critical imagination into this technology? Yes or no? Okay, so these are the questions of MoneyLab. The other pillar, because at the moment our center has kind of two main pillars. Unfortunately, not more, but okay. So that's it. The Institute of Natural Cultures has, like everybody else in the Netherlands, its ups and downs. It grows, and now we are with you know, only 3 people or 4. So don't imagine that it's big, but we have a lot of guests and there's always a lot of things happening. But the center itself is in fact quite small. But what we are most known for, and what is visible, is the publishing. Right? And our experiments with digital publishing. And if students come from all over the world to work with us, they primarily focus on digital publishing. Yeah, how do you do it? You know, what are the techniques for that? What is it all about? This EPUB, right? It's very important for us that all of the things we produce can be read on smartphones, right? Young people only read on smartphones, so we don't want things to be published only in PDF, right? For instance, what is print on demand, but also other formats. Now, this is at the moment the main series. It's called Theory on Demand, and it is happening in all these different formats. Also, print on demand. And if you have an idea, here you can see some recent ones. You can come to us and you know, propose a title. Here you can also see the other series, and this is the annual one, because every year we make these books, and they are in fact in print. So once a year we make a reader like this, and they're meant for students like you. So I can send you a box with 10 or 20 or 30 copies, they're for free. You can distribute them. And the current one is about the discussion about so-called critical making, right? What to do in this post-digital age, right? When the real and the virtual are merging, and are how do we look at critical making, right? And so here you can find a lot of art projects. This is written by a lot by the artists themselves, but also the theorists who are working in this. I don't know, here in Den Bosch, do you have a Maker Lab or something that is somewhat similar? Maybe, maybe not. Yeah, probably. Yeah, so probably. You know, so there, this could be useful. Okay, so but of course you can also go to our website and order a copy, and then you get it in the mail for free. I mean, so that's also a possibility if you like to have it in the mail at home. This is not always possible with any title, but sometimes, you know, we just invest money into those printed copies. We print 2,000 or 3,000 of them, and then then they go, and then whoever is lucky, you know, has the paper copy. And of course, we send them also a lot to schools. So whole boxes go to schools to be used in courses. One of the projects that is related to this is maybe something you might have to deal with or not. It depends a little bit. But this is the question of you know, what is the future of art criticism in the digital age, right? In an age where magazines are more and more difficult to print and to distribute, to set up a whole administration of you know, where these copies are sold. And so what we see over this is a long-term process, of course, over the decades, is that the traditional art magazines disappear, especially in the smaller, you know, languages like Dutch, but also in the Scandinavian, and you know, maybe in bigger countries like Germany or France, Spain. They might you know, continue for a little while longer, but yeah. So there's a lot of difficulties to distribute the paper versions, right? And okay, you could say, okay, there's still a few bookstores and you can sell them there, but yeah. So what we see is a general kind of crisis in the distribution. So how should you know, art criticism articulate itself? And what we do here in these programs is that we work with young art critics, and we train them to really get a good understanding of the digital tools of today. In many universities where art history is taught, there's zero understanding, you know, of the digital, and there's no training. So a lot of the art critics that, even young ones today, they lack really the most basic skills, and this for us is a big concern, because we believe that artists, designers, you know, we need critics. We need people who judge our work, who are you know, who you also can talk to, because art critics are often also you know, bureaucrats, producers. They are curators. They take up many different roles, right? and what happens when this whole profession dies, right? And this is a real concern for the future of art.
What kind of skills do you need now?
Very basic ones, from running a blog to producing a podcast, to also collaboratively producing texts, to have online dialogues, and so on, so on. Yeah, maybe even up to video editing. Depends a little bit on how far they wanna take it. Yeah, so that's one of the tasks that we do. The art critics are reasonably well organized, at least here in the Netherlands and Flanders and Belgium and surrounding countries. So because also there's very few of them, so they're very easy to identify, and so it's relatively easy to work with them. Okay, another topic. Another part of the work is, of course, about the future, in the same way, and the future of design. Now, design is, of course, a very hip and hyped up topic here in the Netherlands. So for a while, Mieke Gerritsen and I, who I often collaborate with, she's a designer. She used to run the Museum of the Image in Breda for some years until it was closed because Breda couldn't handle the progressive visual culture because so that was an issue here in this part of the country. But then we did the project at Droog in Amsterdam, a small gallery, and we produced this text. So I've got it here. There's not many paper copies, but yeah, it is a small book, and it deals with the question: what happens when there is this whole inflation of design? When you have design as an artistic practice, as something that has still some ties with what was formerly known as graphic design, and on the other hand, a very strong kind of business lobby that has taken over the definition of what design is. And there, the main fields are, maybe design research, which is kind of still harmless, but when you think of design thinking, the design thinking is now a major management strategy. It has got nothing to do anymore with the aesthetics or the visual aspect of it. And so the design world, which of course you can see very well in all design schools in the Netherlands, but in particular in a city like Eindhoven, when you go to the Dutch Design Week, you can see all these the competing and clashing definitions of what design is and what design can do or cannot do. Okay, so this manifesto that we wrote, well, it's a kind of a geopolitical joke, of course, because we say, well, the Chinese, they don't design, they just make, and the Californians, well, they own everything, and they claim they have designed it, and then what the role of Europe is left is to criticize it, which is kind of a joke, because but maybe there's some truth in such a joke, right? So that's the only position kind of we have left, and maybe also this is why you came to a school here in the Netherlands, precisely because of that last aspect. Otherwise you would have studied in China or in California, right? You chose to do your degree in Europe. Here you can see the space and what we did with it. This was an installation, and this was the VR army against the AR army. So the AR, and the VR, right? So here you can see. Yeah. Okay. So these are the, let's say, the projects that you know, I've been involved in, and that my institute is organizing. I'm now going to say a few more words about my own work, because besides this this stuff, I also you know, try to write and publish my own work. And here you can see some of the recent books. One is the Social Media Abyss from 16, and the book on organized networks that I wrote with my Sydney friend Ned Rossiter, which deals with the question of organization, right? So how do people organize themselves in the age of social media, right? And so that is that's an important question. We think, at least, you know, we had a good fun 2 days ago, or 1.5 days ago, with the bug in the app during the American elections procedures in Iowa, right? I mean, that's a very, very ironic case of people who do not even understand the basics of how we should organize, let's say, politics in the age of social media. So that's a major embarrassment for the Democratic Party, but for us it's also very, very significant, namely that these two things are in fact very close, but yeah, they don't communicate. There's no real understanding of how we should integrate these digital tools in, for instance, something simple as a decision-making process. Huh? So that's a part that I've been dealing with, coming like Sebastian from, you know, the squatters movement, and in particular the autonomous social movements there. It was always very, very important to emphasize that you have to own, you know, your own communication channels, right? You cannot delegate that to Facebook or to some other platform. Okay, this is my my position, and I believe, especially also if you now remember in the last couple of months, if you look at what's going on in Hong Kong, it's a very, very good case where you can see how these activist groups are defying the big centralized platforms and are trying to organize alternative ways to communicate amongst each other. Here you can see the table of content of a book like this. It's very simple the way I write my books. There's nothing really. I just collect my essays after 3 or 4 years, bring them together, because I'm working on more or less on you know, a coherent topic. So and here you can see that in that period I was really very much concerned with the thinking of fintech and the critique of the cryptocurrencies in the Money Lab project, because I still believe that that digital money and you know, the question who is going to define it, this is going to be of utmost importance, especially for artists, because the architecture that we choose to you know, in the end will also define you know, how you are going to make your living, right? Okay. Now I want to say a few things more about the wider context, because of course I'm not the only one working in this field, and these two books they are quite opposite, but they're of equal importance. Maybe you've heard about the Stack on the left, right? This is Benjamin Bratton's book from 2016. It's a book about the different layers of infrastructure, digital infrastructure that are there, and together he calls this the Stack. This book is written for designers and for artists. It's quite abstract, but on the other hand, it's very, very relevant, and it's fun to read, because it shows that these realms of the digital, the platforms, etc., is a realm that consists of concepts. Yeah? And these concepts are developed by people like you and me and everybody, right? We develop these ideas, and then slowly we see them, they transform, they mutate, and they become something else, right? And so why is it so important to read the theory, understand the history? It's precisely to understand the importance of the developments of your own concepts. Yeah? And this is very, very powerful. The moment you have experienced yourself for the first time, to develop something like that, and then to see it growing, people taking it up, discussing it. That's the first stage. But of course, in this digital age, these concepts also transform into something else. They transform, first of all, in code, and then, of course, also in social practices, right? And so the Stack is really itself a concept, of course. The Stack is a concept. And the book is full of examples of how, let's say, a critical and speculative way of thinking will help you to get a better understanding of this fast changing environment, but also all the setbacks that we are facing, right? Because funny enough, there's not just endless progress and more and more and more, faster and faster and faster. Since 5 or 10 years, maybe a bit longer, we are in a process of societal stagnation and regression, right? Things do no longer progress anymore. They stop, they stagnate, and even they go back, right? And there's many political names for that. Some call it right-wing populism, but we also see that in tech, right? This is also happening, and that is described particularly well by the second writer, also an American. Benjamin Bratton is in San Diego, in California, but Shoshana Zuboff, she's on the East Coast, and she is the one who describes very well what has happened in Silicon Valley over the past 10 years, when they started building this enormous, sophisticated extraction machine. And here you can see some of the images in that book, in which she tries to describe what happens when you click on a like, or when you follow a person on Twitter, Instagram, or Facebook, doesn't matter, and who is benefiting from this, and who is let's say taking this action and then turning it into data, then trading this data, and in this trade making a profit, right? And that's what she calls here the discovery of behavioral surplus, right? So you click on something, and then mysteriously it creates billionaires. How is that possible? Why should when I click on something, why should that produce any value, right? Now, and she describes this very, very well in this book, and I can highly recommend it. The stack is more, let's say, on the speculative, on the design side. Now you can debate, of course, the whole question whether Benjamin Bratton is critical of developments, yes or no, or if he's just another representative of the so-called Californian ideology. He's also, maybe you know, the course director of Strelka in Moscow. He's really a very clever player. So I would not, dismiss him as just a silly Silicon Valley evangelist, but nonetheless. Shoshana Zuboff, on the other hand, she's much more critical, but funny enough, I think her understanding of capitalism is rather primitive. So whereas Benjamin Bratton has a much deeper understanding of the technology and how it relates to capitalism, Shoshana Zuboff kind of tries to save capitalism from these new rubber barons, more or less, right? So that's her political program. Anyway, okay, just very quick, I want to look at Europe, because where is Europe in all this, right? There's no one. Okay, can we think of any European thinker in this field who has a substantial contribution? Unfortunately, we can't. So even the critique is still dominated by, more or less, by Americans. Here you look at a few of the German thinkers, and then you see that they are quite kind of pragmatist, a bit like on the side of Niklas Luhmann, system theory, and they are kind of a little bit detached from it, and they want to see it as a larger project. And so in Germany lately, in the last, let's say, 5 years, the theory has primarily focused on, what is in Germany called a digitization, right? Nobody else is really discussing that topic, because elsewhere in the world we have kind of more or less agreed that the process of digitization is over, right? And that everything that is already here in the room, everything has already been digitized, or is in one or another way, in close contact with the digital realm. And think, of 5G, what's coming up. You can imagine that this process of digitization that we consider is already closed will only further kind of accelerate. So this is the theory of the digital society. This is maybe also, I'm not really sure how to look at this, but for me it's at least important to notice that there is a relative stagnation, and that there is not much new to report from the European front. So if anything, we can expect, especially from Germany, more regulation and an attempt to more or less regulate Silicon Valley. So the maximum we can expect is work that will be done by lawyers to somehow create a legal framework to, let's say, domesticate these giants, right? So that's about it. Let's see, if this theory of the digital society is going somewhere. It's of course related, as you might know, with the industrialization 4.0, and this is kind of where we are in the larger debate. Okay. And then there's my own, contribution. So this is my last book. Here you see the English version and the Spanish version. Here you can see the table of content. And I'll quickly go through it because this book kind of deals, with the aftermath of the internet after 2016, when my last book came out that you saw before, Social Media Abyss. So this book deals with the period between 2018 and 2016 and 18, 3 years. This book is a little bit thinner. I've written it a bit faster, and I'm quite happy with it. Likely it's probably my best book so far. So it took me a while to come to this, but yeah, it's nice to see that a book that you write relatively fast can also be one that is the most to the point and that speaks to a lot of the reality, especially of young people. So I'm glad about that. The book starts with the question of what I call here the disillusioned internet in the post-Brexit and Trump era, right? So we kind of know that we're surveilled, we kind of know that we're manipulated, that the news feeds and the algorithms are all trying to fool us, manipulate us, but yeah, we can't really do much about it, right? So, and this is, we continue to use all these platforms quite intensely. We can even see that in the past couple of years, the overall use has only further increased. So there is this culture of stagnation. We know there is this kind of discontent that is out there, but the discontent goes together with an increased use. So the disillusion is not leading to, let's say, what we maybe could expect or not, like resistance or refusal or the deletion. Maybe young people no longer use Facebook and instead use more Instagram and WhatsApp. Okay, so that's the big news that we have in this era, and that's of course quite disappointing overall, and is not really doing something about this feeling of being trapped. Okay, so this feeling is the starting point of my analysis, and then I go to the questions of what happens when social media become ideology, when we don't really see them anymore, when they are there, but we don't even notice that in the past few minutes we've looked at the screen twice and looked at the updates on the apps, right? So we don't even register this anymore. And then in the chapters after that, I go into this whole question of being distracted. Well, the whole intergenerational fight of the parents and the teachers against the young people and their smartphones. So this is kind of a societal struggle over the question, what to do with this distraction. I don't know what you think of going on a digital detox weekend with a few friends and not looking at your phone. If that's fun, I don't think it's fun. I don't think you're doing it. So so where is this going? Okay. The Sad by Design essay itself is in this book, and I'm going to read a few parts of it in a few minutes. And then, it also has a very dark, very German chapters. That's okay. That's also part of me. So that's very dark material on technological violence and the question of extermination, from registration to extermination, and the recent case, by the way, of Facebook's involvement in the genocide in Burma, right? I don't know if you know much about that. I compare that to the historical involvement of IBM in the Holocaust. And then in the last part, usually, my books are built up like that. I look more into, let's say, more detailed stuff. In this case, the selfie. I'm part of a group that is organizing, let's say, more critical theory of the selfie. We're very much in favor of selfie. So we're pro-selfie in the same way as we're very much in favor of memes. We study them, we use them, we enjoy them. So I'm absolutely not moralistic about that. I don't belong to the moral class of people who say this is all bad and leads to the destruction of Western civilization. No, not at all. But what we do, and this is kind of an overall topic in looking at the transitions in the last, let's say, decade. This is what really intrigues me, and it is the relation between these three key concepts. There are also the concepts, let's say, that cover my work, my life, basically, in the last 40 years, right? And so that is the media activism and the whole question of the media that I dealt with in the 80s and 90s, also my involvement in German media theory, and so on, right? And media arts, of course, all this. So that's a long history. I've always been struggling and dealing with this term, like what is a medium? Then, of course, in the 90s, we saw the rise of the networks, right? The computer networks, of course, they have a past. Already in the 70s, we spoke of social network analysis. So the idea of the network is a little bit older, but only in the 90s we had the possibility to create networks across the globe through digital and technical means. Now you could also say it was a short summer of the network, because we know that these days networks are no longer really there. We don't know them. We don't, especially young people, have no idea what they're all about, because there are only platforms, right? And so the networks have been subsumed, more or less, or have disappeared. A lot of the functionalities have been maybe taken over or transformed by these tech giants. But yeah, the networks themselves, maybe there are some still working, like in the background. But yeah, how do you set up a network, maintain it, care for it? This is all increasingly becoming obscure knowledge. So this is kind of where we are. We are living under platform capitalism, and that is the reality of today's world. Right? Today's world is dominated by Uber, Airbnb, Amazon, right? And it's spreading across a lot of the different sectors, and has, by the way, already by and large left the no longer really important realm of media and communication, and is now spreading towards health, agriculture, you name it, logistics, of course, a wide range of economic and societal activities that go well beyond the question, how do I communicate with you, or shall I send you an email, or an app message, or an SMS message, etc. Right? This question is increasingly becoming not irrelevant, but if you look at the larger picture of this process of digitization, you see that there's much more at stake. And what's more at stake is exactly the platform capitalism, right? We see that all these different economic activities are concentrated into these large entities. All right, so now I want to move to, let's say, the more specific question that you know, I was going to talk to you about, and I'm going to read a few passages of my essay, Sad by Design. By the way, if you want to read the full chapter, the essay itself, it's online, and it's published in a website called Eurozine, eurozine.com. And eurozine.com a couple of weeks ago has also published my latest essay, which kind of builds on this. It's called Notes on the Network Psyche. Yeah. So networks on is also, you can find that new text out there. Also, there's a new text, by the way, that I wrote about the whereabouts of the network. And that I wrote for the Transmediale Festival, which I mentioned, which happened over the last weekend in Berlin. And that text is called Requiem for the Network. So in which I look back at the whole network discourse or practices, if you like. Yeah, so I'm going to read a little bit from this, and then we can open up the floor for discussion. Shall I? Yeah. Let me see. Yeah. Okay. All right. Try and dream, if you can, of a morning app. The mobile has come dangerously close to our psychic bone, to the point where the two can no longer be separated. If only my phone could gently weep. Marshall McLuhan's Extensions of Man has imploded right into the exhausted self. Social media and the psyche have fused, turning daily life into a social reality. I introduce here the term social reality. It's very much similar to, let's say, virtual reality and artificial reality. And social reality is the reality of the social. And this is how the Italians call social media. Are you on social? This is what the Italians ask each other. Are you on social? Which means, are you online? Can I talk to you through the social media? So I'm talking here about social reality. A social reality that, much like artificial and virtual reality, is overtaking our perception of the world and its inhabitants. Social reality is a corporate hybrid between handheld media and the psychic structure of the user. It's a distributed form of social ranking that can no longer be reduced to the interests of states and corporate platforms. As online subjects, we too are implicit, far too deeply involved. Social reality works in a peer-to-peer fashion. It's all about you and your profile. Likes and followers define your social status. But what happens when nothing can motivate you anymore? When all the self-optimization techniques fail and you begin to carefully avoid these forms of emotional analytics. Compared to others, your ranking is low, and this makes you sad. In his 10 arguments for deleting your social media accounts right now, Jaron Lanier asks, why do so many famous tweets end with the word sad? He associates the word with a lack of real connection. Why must people accept manipulation by a third party, he asks, as the price of a connection? According to Lanier, sadness appears in response to unreasonable standards for beauty or social status or vulnerability to trolls. Google and Facebook know how to utilize negative emotions more readily, leading to the new system-wide goal: find personal ways to make you feel bad. There's no single way to make everyone unhappy. Sadness will be tailorized to you. Even technological sadness is a style. Look at here, Mr. Sad. A bite, a cold one. The sorrow, no matter how short, is real. This is what happens when we can no longer distinguish between telephone and society. If we can't freely change our profile and feel too weak to delete the app, we're condemned to feverishly check for updates during the brief in-between moments of our busy lives. In a split second, the real-time machine has teleported us out of our current situation and onto another playing field, filled with mini reports we quickly have to investigate. Omnipresent social media places a claim on our elapsed time, our fractured lives. We're all sad in our very own way. As there are no lulls or quiet moments anymore, the result is fatigue, depletion, and loss of energy. We're becoming obsessed with waiting. How long have you been forgotten by your loved ones? Time, meticulously measured on every app, tells us right to your face. Chronos hurts. Should I post something to attract attention and show that I'm still there? Nobody likes me anymore. As the random messages keep relentlessly piling in, there's no way to hold them, to take a moment and think it all through. Delacroix once declared that every day which is not noted is like a day that does not exist. Diary writing used to fulfill that task. Elements of early blog culture tried to update the diary form for the online realm. But that moment has now passed. Unlike blog entries of the Web 2.0 era, social media have surpassed the summary state of the diary in a desperate attempt to keep up with the real-time regime. Instagram stories, for example, bring back the nostalgia of an unfolding chain of events. and then disappear at the end of the day like a revenge act, a satire of ancient sentiments gone by. Storage will make the pain permanent. Better forget about it and move on. In the online context, sadness appears as a short moment of indecisiveness, a flash that opens up the possibility of a reflection. The frequently used sad label is a vehicle, a strange attractor to enter the liquid mass called social media. Sadness is a container. Each and every situation can potentially be qualified as sad. And here we see this object here is a particularly sad one, right? We all know that. So everything can potentially be qualified as sad. Through this mild form of suffering, we enter the blues of being in the world. When something is sad, things around it become gray. You trust the machine because you feel you're in control of it. You want to go from zero to hero. But then your propped up ego implodes and the failure of self-esteem becomes apparent again. The price of self-control in an age of instant gratification is high. We no longer revolt against the restless zombie inside us, but we don't know how. Our psychic armor is thin and eroded from within, open to behavioral modifications. Sadness arises at the point we're exhausted by the online world. After yet another app session in which we failed to make a date, purchased a ticket, and did a quick round of videos, the post-dopamine mood hits us hard. The sheer busyness and self-importance of the world makes you feel joyless. After a dive in the network, we're drained and feel socially awkward. The swiping finger is tired, and we have to stop. Should we be careful to distinguish sadness from anomalies such as suicide, depression, and burnout? That's why I make a clear distinction here between those. Everything and everyone can be called sad, but not everyone is depressed. Much like boredom, sadness is not a medical condition. Though, never say never, because everything can be turned into one. No matter how brief and mild, sadness is the default mental state of the online billions. Its original intensity gets dissipated. It seeps out, becoming a general atmosphere, a chronic background condition. Occasionally, for a brief moment, we feel the loss. A seething rage emerges. After checking for the 10th time what somebody said on Instagram, the pain of the social makes us feel miserable, and we put the phone away. Am I suffering from the phantom vibration symptom? Wouldn't it be nice if we were offline? Why is life so tragic? He blocked me. At night, you read through the thread again. Do we need to quit again? go cold turkey again. Others are supposed to move us, to arouse us, and yet we don't feel anything anymore. The heart is frozen. Let's compare the fleeting sadness in its technical form with the ancient state of melancholy. The melancholic personality seems to suffer from a disease. Unable to act, she withdraws from the world, contemplating death and other transient phenomena. While some read this condition as depression or boredom, others reframe this lazy passivity as a creative strategy, waiting for inspiration to strike. Instead of a fascinating derive into the vast arsenal of literary sources, I propose here a digital hermeneutics that shortcuts philology with the eternal presence of the digital that surrounds us. Melancholy, often described as sadness without a cause, has strong existential connotations. While paying tribute to Kierkegaard, who liberated melancholia once and for all of its medical stigma, describing it as the deepest foundation of the human in a godless society, the problem here is not a vertical one of going deeper, but a horizontal one. The democratization of sadness happens through its thin spread across our plateau. Homeopathic doses flatly distributed via technical means. The metric to measure today's symptoms would be time, or attention, as it is called in the industry. While for the archaic melancholic, the time never passes, techno-sadness is caught in the perpetual now. Forward-focused, we bet on acceleration and never mourn a lost object. The primary identification is there, in your hand. Everything is evident on the screen, right in your face. While confronted with the rich historical sources that dealt with melancholia, the contrast with our present condition becomes immediately apparent. Whereas melancholy in the past was defined by separation from others, reduced contacts, and reflection on oneself, today's tristesse plays itself out amidst busy social media interactions. In Sherry Turkle's phrase, we are alone together as part of the crowd, a form of loneliness that is particularly cruel, frantic, and tiring. What we see today are systems that constantly disrupt the timeless aspect of melancholy. There's no time for contemplation or Weltschmerz. Social reality does not allow us to retreat. Even in our deepest state of solitude, we're surrounded by online others that babble on and on, demanding our attention. But distraction does not just take us away from the world. This is the old, if still prevalent, way of framing the fatal attraction of smartphones. No. Distraction does not pull us away, but instead draws us back into the social. Social reality is the magic realm where we belong. That's where the tribes gather, and that's the place to be, on top of the world. Social relations in real life have lost their supremacy. The idea of going back to the village mentality of the place, formerly known as real life, is daunting indeed. Most of the time, your eyes are glued to the screen, as if it's now or never. As Gloria Estefan wrote, the sad truth is that opportunity doesn't knock twice. Then you stand up and walk away from the intrusions. The fear of missing out backfires. The social battery is empty and you put the phone aside. This is the moment sadness arises. It's all been too much. The intake has been pulverized and you shut down for a moment, poisoning him with your unanswered messages. According to Mark Grave, the hallmark of the conversion to what he calls anti-experience is a lowered threshold for eventfulness. A Facebook event is one you're interested in, but do not attend. We observe others around us, yet are no longer part of the conversation. I quote Mark Grave again. They are nature's creatures in the full grace of modernity. The sad truth is that you still want to live in their world. It just somehow seems that this world has changed to exile you. You leave the online arena, you need to rest. This is an inverse moment from the constant quest for experience. That is, until you turn your head away, grab the phone, swipe, and text back. God only knows what I'd be without the app. I'll leave it here. Thank you very much.
Before we go to questions, and I know you all have many, I would like to introduce Una Henry, who is the head of the Master Institute of Visual Cultures, and Una has also the first question.
Thank you, Sebastian. Yeah, it works. Okay. Thank you, Geert. It's always very inspiring. I've followed Geert for quite a long time. Sebastian's always joking that I'm some sort of like groupie. I think there's some of you here I know I've spoken to in the audience who are also groupies. That said, in your text you also mentioned the Invisible Committee.
Mm-hmm.
So I'm looking at the era of the network, as you call it, and this notion of a sort of digital detox. So what you had, of course, were very prevalent then exodus strategies, and that's drawn from the Italian autonomous, for those of you who don't know that. The Invisible Committee drew on a lot of that, the theory around that. The Invisible Committee identified 7 circles of alienation. So let's just like sprung some thoughts. And these are induced by states and capitalism. So this alienation relates to the self, to social relations, to work, to the urban, to economy, to the environment, and finally to the state itself. And inside what Geert is talking about is absolutely all of this, I would say. In his book, you mentioned where the Invisible Committee talk about this sort of autistic bubble. So I will come back to that I have another thought about that, because I'm not sure if what they say is entirely correct, that we are in this autistic bubble. What I want to talk about, though, or ask Geert his thoughts on it, The Coming Insurrection was a book that the Invisible Committee published, now published again by Semiotext, as far as I remember off the top of my head. I'm very intrigued by the Invisible Committee. Nobody knows yet who the authors are, apart from maybe, I've got a feeling Geert might actually know. But he'll never tell us. He operates in these very incredible circles. So I want to think about this idea of artistic critique. So I'm going to connect the Coming Insurrection with artistic critique that Geert is also sort of panning out there at the beginning of the conversation or the talk. The Coming Insurrection was a book that there became a legal case by what was called the Tarnack Nine, a group of 9 young people, including somebody called Julian Coupa, who were arrested in Tarnack. It was a self-organized village where they grew their own food. They had it was like a sort of a cooperative enterprise, basically. They had a small cinema, so the whole cinema and all the films and everything were raided. They accused Julian Coupa of having written The Coming Insurrection. What's very interesting about Julian Coupa, he was writing his PhD with Boltanski and Chappelle, say that right, New Spirit of Capitalism. He then didn't finish it, but he was very involved in the notion of artistic critique. Artistic critique in this book has been the idea is that it has been fully co-opted by capital. So my question always that I struggle with, also running an arts institution, is can we claim that artistic critique is still alive and kicking? Can it still speak for us and do something? And can it, especially under the rubric of performative defiance, does it still have a place? Can it create transitions or rupture or make something change?
Okay. Let's say putting these ideas in the framework of where I come from 80s, 90s experiences, it's very much a question of how do we build what Hackenberg calls these temporary autonomous zones, because that's where we would find possibly traces or possibilities inside that to live out, to live, to celebrate those artistic projects or possibilities that the Invisible Committee talks about. I don't think it's really possible outside of that. What this is aimed at is a celebration of life, and I think we can use that kind of vitalist language, because it's a life, that is not commodified. It's a life that is not defined by and overruled and suppressed by outside forces, right? And so there is this kind of core idea that there is a life that can be lived, an autonomous life. Maybe it's not authentic. That word is not used, but it's there, and it manifests itself in the resistance, because it cannot just happen in a kind of vacuum. If only that would be nice, but that vacuum is simply not given to us. So so this celebration of the possibility to have a life is a promise, and it's not there, but what we can do is we can work we can kind of prepare for it. This is almost a naive early Christian notion of the return of Christ, right? That we find in the very early writings in the Bible, where the return of Christ is almost imminent, right? It's almost there, and it's kind of that is also in the writings of a lot of the autonomists. So the promise is there. It's almost there. It's around the corner. And so it's not like in the Leninist option. You have to work hard for it. There's no Calvinist notion that if we all work hard enough, we will get there, right? Because it simply doesn't quite work like that. You don't just get there through enough self-organization, right? So yeah, it's somewhat mysterious. It's promising, and yeah, I mean, the writings of me right now happen in a period of a lull, when there's nothing like that, when there's no promise, where there's yeah, but that's also just a stage, you know. It's not like it's going to be like this forever, but yeah, it's just where we are at the moment. It's also what some people call the great regression, not the great recession, right? But it's the great regression.
I think just drawing on that, Geert, this is just from a very personal experience I have with my own 13-year-old son and his group of friends. So yeah, this is like the lull period. What I see is that they don't have this problem. They are already able to get off the screen. They use their social media platforms. So for example, I'm amazed, I think it's incredible. We've been very mobile, moving around different countries. So what's incredible, they may be gaming, they're gaming all together and in the same game, which I think is fantastic. And they're able to talk to all of these friends in England, here, different cities, Amsterdam, Delft, you know, so they're able to like have these incredible games with people that some of them don't know, but that my son has met and are all friends. And I think that's amazing. However, he would never touch Facebook. He's very, very critical of Instagram, Snapchat, TikTok, the whole. And I think that's really exciting because they are this other, you know, generation that didn't come through what we came through.
Yeah, definitely. What I describe here is probably very generational specific. It's an experience that is made by the so-called millennials, but it's not designed and defined by that generation, right? So this is the problem. If only millennials were really in charge. Unfortunately, this is not the case. They are the object of all these strategies, and that's maybe also why I'm involved in it, because I have a maybe good insight on the psychological and economic strategies of this Silicon Valley class that knows precisely how to manipulate this generation in particular, using what is called behavioral modifications.
Shall we go on to your questions, please? Who wants to start? Because I've got many, but go on. Can Una, are you going, or shall I? Yeah. There is a question there, Leonard. Yeah.
No, I can do it without the microphone.
No, sorry.
Then I have to do it with the microphone. Okay. No. Hello. I just because you mentioned the journal linear, I wanted to ask you one specific, your point of view on one specific thing. He actually sort of, I remember that he pushed in interviews and talks. He pushed the idea of opening to changing taking a big step and trying to propose the changing of the sort of the economic model of Facebook, for example. And he proposed, let's imagine Facebook working like Netflix. So it becomes
a subscription-based service.
Sort of a subscription-based service that you can access it portfolio. There's no need to go for data for the platform to survive or to become
Sure.
billionaire. And I think that you're of course aware of this idea, so I wanted to ask what is your take on this?
Yeah, he wrote a whole book, in fact, very early about it. So his economic proposition to Silicon Valley was already written in 2010 or 11. Small booklet I was quoting from, forget your or delete your social media, whatever, that small pamphlet was only written in the aftermath of the Cambridge Analytica discussion in 17. He had already thought about it, but he was very early in a way. And if you compare, let's say, his proposition to the harsh reality that Shoshana Zuboff describes in her book, How Social Media Operate, in terms of extraction. You can see that this model worked very, very well without many people understanding it. Let's say until 17 or 18, right? Now his proposition was already done a long time ago and was more or less done in the aftermath of the global financial crisis, where he said Silicon Valley can no longer, go on like this, can no longer only be depending on advertisements and the sales of the private data of all its users. Okay, but we're now in 2020, and their economy, we have now good insight or understanding of how it works, but it has not yet been dismantled, right? And there's no indication at the moment, at least, that both Google, Facebook, Twitter, and all the others are going to change that basic, economic model and exchange it, for something that I would, together maybe with you and Lanier and many others, would think is a much better and more sustainable, more transparent business model, namely the one which is subscription-based. It's not happening, right? So we kind of, do we have to wait? What are we waiting for? This is the big question, and this is the problem. We are sitting in the waiting room. In the waiting room of history, waiting for what? World War III or something, or the arrival of Brussels to take action. Who's going to? Very likely, as we know, Trump is not going to make any substantial changes. He's in fact benefiting from it. If you look at the recent numbers, the amount of advertisement he has bought and already invested through Facebook is phenomenal, and should really be a concern of us all. But it's not happening, and so we just have to endure this period. So it seems.
Other questions?
Go ahead. Yeah.
It might be a very down-to-earth question, but I've been studying the internet a little bit myself, and I was wondering a little bit how do you keep up with it, and how are you sure that and how are you sure that what you say is actually true? Because it's so fast and so efficient. And
well, first of all, I want to say that sadness is only a very, very small part in the specter, let's say, of emotional responses or or affect economies, as it's also called, right? Sadness is not everything, and there are a whole range of emotional responses or mental states that one could, look at, and that I'm extremely interested in myself. Okay, so sadness is only one microscopic in that sense. There is boredom, there's loneliness, which is a very big topic. Then, of course, I do not really in this essay try to make a gender analysis, but obviously there is the gender reading of it all. Women are sad, guys are mad, right? They get angry, so there's the whole kind of analysis of anger, right? And especially Facebook and Google, who are or YouTube in particular, who are actively promoting anger to get people mad, like because they're going to click on it, they're going to get angry. So the whole industry itself is, for instance, focused on the regulation of that male response that I'm not talking about here at all, right? And that's, for instance, the whole trolling, anger, provocations, and so most of the research, in fact, in my field, is of course going into the understanding of that, and in the maybe also in the regulation of that field. Think of fake news and so on, right? The whole Western political elite is obsessed with this one question right now, right? How can we curb fake news and so on, right? So my own research is relatively small, and they don't care if people are feeling bad, really, basically, because bad feelings is okay. It really gets of a concern when they are going to act on it and really get angry and so on, attack the other with all their rage. Yeah. So what we're seeing here is like an enormous emotional register of possible, and how I do not make a claim that everybody is sad, but I know that everybody is a subject to all these very subtle changes. We are susceptible for likes. We know we want more friends. We want more followers. We want instant gratification. We want instant responses, and so on and so on. So in that sense, the sadness, the technological sadness, is there. But maybe some people will be emotionally very stable, and they can completely ignore it. Or a whole new generation that I see is growing up, who has already listened to my talks, right? The 13-year-olds, they already know what I'm saying. Not only did they know, they've fully understood what I said, but they've already incorporated ways to circumvent it, to deal with it, right? So that's also why these responses are temporary and in a way also tactical. Go ahead.
Do you want to?
Yes, say.
Yeah, I'm just wondering a little bit, like, also with this, I have to forgive you, but
Maybe take the time and think it through, and I'll ask a question in the meantime. Is that a deal? Yeah, because I like the idea that after the failure of the Italian idea of sort of messianic event, right?
Yeah.
Of someone
Of
coming
the-
to
of-
save us.
of
Now
the social movement.
now you're
Yeah.
proposing yourself
Yeah.
as the one who is going to be the savior of the next generation because they've listened to your talk. I really
Yeah,
like
because
that. But
I
I-
can see this around me, and I think in the development of the internet, we know it's going very fast, right? So we know that what we describe now, will not be there all the time, and will be surpassed by new groups, by new behaviors, and also even, and I'm very serious about that, by financial systems that will make all this advertisement-driven blackmailing of emotional blackmailing of people will make a thing of the past. This is very likely to happen.
Yeah. Okay. Great. Of course, when I read the book, I didn't have the feeling that you were saying everyone is sad, but I had the feeling that you were using sadness as a sort of metonym for what is going on.
It's a case study, after all.
On the
Yeah, it's
internet.
a case study of one of the many feelings,
Yeah.
and I also feel a strong urge to describe others, right? I mean, in the past, for instance, I have dealt more also with the psychopathology of the troll, for instance. I've known trolls myself, for instance, this is to deal with the trolling other. Is something that the internet culture has been dealing with.
No, but what I mean is that what you're trying to do is to sort of offer us a sort of counter narrative to the sort of optimism that we had, throughout the noughties, and even, the sort of switch, is only a couple of years old, I think, and still, in institutions such as those, where we work, there is still, a very sort of optimistic story being told about the internet, and you
And the digital,
contest that, yeah. And I was wondering, because one of the reasons why this makes so much sense to me, using this sort of metonymic notion of sadness, is that what we can say is that the digital form, digital technology, and the internet in this sort of uninnovative form in which we have it now is destroying something, and it is. And so I'm surprised, that you're saying that the social has been has been totally integrated into the digital. And I find it also interesting that when you talk about this joke about made in China, designed in California, criticized in Europe.
Yeah.
Clearly the joke is on Europe here, right?
Yeah, of course.
So you're saying Europe has this
because it's not happening.
Yeah, but that's what you're saying, but it's not true, because the two people, for instance, there are more that you don't mention are Yevgeny Morozov and Bernard Stiegler, and they are European critics. If I think of Germany, I'm not thinking of these system theory dinosaurs, but I'm thinking of writers such as Sibylle Berg or bands like Deichkind. These are proper critiques, and sort of up to the time.
Yeah.
And if we think about the stuff that someone like Morozov and Stiegler are writing, then they wouldn't say they wouldn't talk about a absorption of the social into the digital, but they would more sort of talk about this technology as a sort of blockage that does not allow a form of sociality that would be appropriate to our time to emerge, right? And someone like Morozov also doesn't mind to sort of turn around and look back at the sort of socialist history and so on, and sort of salvage elements from that in order to think a kind of collectivity that one might be able to build in the future. Where I totally agree with you is that the dream of the invisible collective and all that messianic autonomous stuff that was very hip in the noughties, and I wrote an entire PhD about that. That's over. We now know that we have to organize. We just haven't found a way to do that now.
Yeah.
And I was wondering, is that sort of these jokes about critique and so on, is that a call to organization? And more concretely is, how can we do it? How we do? Are there ways that you have experimented with the sort of network cultures that you see, have also succeeded?
Yeah, it's true, of course, that I'm more and more withdrawing to Europe and to the possibilities that I see that we have here, that we should clearly utilize, because I don't think that a clear, let's say, global understanding of the bigger forces will help us out. I think we've made the analysis. It's now up to us to act and to build or rebuild strong European networks of exchanges, so that we can learn in a very fast way what's going on and what's happening across the continent. So that's my current undertaking. But yeah, it leaves aside that I'm ironic, but it's a self irony that how powerful are we in the end? I'm not so sure. I would like that both Morozov and Stiegler, would have somehow a dialogue or a tie to the large, regulatory machines that we see at work and that are clearly, gathering in Brussels and stuff like that, right? And so the regulatory regimes that we will see in the coming years, especially after Brexit, coming from Brussels, will be substantive. But the question there is only, will it have some kind of an imagination, or will it only be lawyers talking to Facebook?
But isn't that what we? I mean, isn't that exactly where we come in? Because when we talk about like post-contemporary, a post-contemporary academy, post-contemporary practice. I mean, I think what we're trying to do is to sort of,
because I believe in that.
Yeah, so
I believe that this is a
so empower
this is a fertile ground to encounter, what's happening across the road here. What was the name again?
Yeah.
The Digital Mind building.
Yeah.
I mean, the first thing you could do is organize a public blockade of the building next door, right? To provoke the discussion. What is let's say the digital economy in Europe in the future, right? And this needs to be politicized, and we need to be very open about it. The digital technologies have the potential to organize not only a redistribution of wealth, and can be used as a force against the growing unequal distribution of wealth and income in the world. It can also be used for the complete opposite, as we already know, and because that's what happens right now. It's up to us to do that.
Are there more questions? Well, if there are more, I would have more, but I think it would be a good idea to stop here. And thank you very much for your brilliant talk and the discussion.
Thanks so much.